Did you ever as a child make promises to your friends, and very often you make a promise and you'd cross your finger behind your back so the promise wasn't binding? I remember doing that quite a lot when I was younger, and I'm sure that you've made promises over and over again to many people around you. When I was younger, I remember taking the kids, or promising to take the kids to the cinema, but I never did it. I never got around to doing it because something else came up. And sometimes I would promise my wife, yeah, I'm going to wash the dishes tonight. But lo and behold, I forget to do the dishes and she ends up doing them anyway. But how does that make you feel when you make a promise and you don't keep it? Or how would it make you feel on the other end if somebody's promised you something, you don't keep that promise? It doesn't lay well with us, doesn't it? It doesn't make us feel any good, because there's pain involved when you're getting let down by people, especially by those who love us. And we see promises being broken all the time, don't we? All around the world, people promise till death do us do part. But things happen and they end up breaking those promises and they don't keep them. Well, we don't keep 100% of our promises anyway, do we? If we're honest with one another, nobody does that. We might have really good intentions to do what we say we're going to do, but sometimes we forget. And sometimes we decide that we'd rather do something else instead. When God called Abraham to leave his home in Ur of the Chaldeans, he left without having a clue about where he was going. And what's interesting is when God asked him to go, he never once questioned God about where am I going, why do you want me to go? He just went. And surely that is faith in action. And because of his faith, God promised that he would make his family so big that they would become a nation. And so God told Abraham that he's going to have many kids, that they're not going to be able to count them, how many kids they're going to have. They're going to be as numerous as the dust of the earth. They're going to be as numerous as the stars in the night and the sands on the seashore. What a promise that is. Now remember, at the time of the first promise, Abraham was 75 years of age and Sarah was 65 years of age, and both of them were way too old to have children. But can you imagine the patience they needed to trust God on his promise of these numerous children? Abraham's 100 years old, Sarah's 90-year-old. In total, Sarah and Abraham had to wait 25 years for the fulfillment of that promise. And Abraham, he would have had no idea what a blessing he was going to be to the rest of humanity. When God called him for the first time, he had no idea what was coming up. But he and Sarah both trusted God and believed that God can use anyone to fulfill his promises. The question you need to ask yourself is this: do you trust God to fulfill his promises? Well, how can you tell? Well, one way is to look at your life. Are you stressing out about absolutely everything? Are you worried about what's going to happen tomorrow or next month or next year? These are telltale signs that you're maybe not trusting God as much as you should. You know, when you think about it, you go on an airplane flight to America, for example. You're on that plane for 8 hours. You don't even know the pilot, and yet you're relaxed. Or maybe you go on a cruise ship and you're away for 2 weeks in the middle of the ocean somewhere, and yet you don't know the captain, but you still relax and you still have fun. Or maybe you're on a 4-hour bus trip and you don't even know the driver of the bus, but still you trust him enough to get you to where you want to go. So why don't you relax? Relax in your life knowing that God is in control. You know, when you think about it, when a train, for example, is going through a tunnel, it gets really dark inside the tunnel. Now, you don't throw away the ticket and jump off, do you? No, you sit there and you trust the engineer. You trust the driver of that train. And so let me ask you, are you willing to trust God today no matter how dark your situation is, because God always promises you're coming out. There's going to be light. There's going to be blessings the next day. You see, God never stops working for our good. No matter how much time goes by, if we have faith that God holds our eternity, then we should have faith that God holds her every day. And so there's no reason to stress about tomorrow. There's no reason to worry about what's going to happen next month. Because there is only one person who has always kept his promises 100% of the time, and that is God. He really does keep his promises. No matter how long we have to wait, his promises will ultimately come to pass. You see, just as God promised Abraham he was going to have numerous children, God's also made another promise. The judgment day is coming. And you may wonder, well, why hasn't that day come yet? As many people ask that question. Well, the answer is simple. He's patient with you. He doesn't want anybody to perish, but he wants everybody to come to him in repentance so that they could be saved. You see, the promises of numerous children for Abraham is still being fulfilled to this very day. Every time somebody becomes a Christian, every time somebody is baptised into Christ, they become one of Abraham's children. And so the question is this: will you become a child of Abraham today? Will you allow God to save you today? God bless.